How to promote your indie game for $100. So today I'm going to share with you the exact process I use to market and promote my clients' indie games. And the goal with this technique you're about to learn has nothing to do with, getting your name out there and trying to get exposure, and has nothing to do with branding or getting likes. The goal is to get tangible results like, 10,000 wish lists before your game launch, or hitting, 1,500 sales a month. So in this video, I'm going to go through step by step my entire process so that you can easily follow and reach your own wish list sales goals. But please know, business is a risk. There's no guarantees. And yeah, my goal is to give you, fundamental steps to help you promote your game. But in the end, you got to put in the hard work. What you're about to learn is not easy, and it's not a quick fix. Because starting and growing a new game studio takes a lot of work, more than you think it does. So you got to be okay that there's going to be a lot of hard work ahead. And if you're good with that, then here's what to do. So here's step one. Prepare before you spend a penny. So like me, you will make mistakes promoting your indie game, because when you're trying something new, it'll probably won't work the first time. So it's best to make, mistakes as cheaply and as quickly as you can. So before I spend a penny on, paid ads, I need to prepare and get rid of any mistakes I can. And I need to make sure that when it's time to, open my wallet and pay for, an ad, that I'm going to get the best ROI on those ads. So let me explain exactly. To make an ad work, you need to find the best appeal for your game. You need to lead with your, game's hook. So having the right appeal is important, because it's what, will grab a player's attention and motivate them to click your ad. And if they click your ad, then you're one step closer to getting, a wish list and then getting that sale. But if you get the appeal wrong, then it doesn't matter if you spend $100 or $10,000. Nobody's going to click that ad if you get the appeal wrong. I mean, just look at Google Stadia and Facebook Metaverse. There was very little appeal for those services, and not even millions spent on marketing could get people to use those services, because the appeal has to be there first. So that's what I want to do first. That's what I try first. I try to figure out first how big the appeal is for the game, and then I try to figure out, the best appeal to lead with when I, pay for ads. So the question is then, how do you exactly find if there is an appeal for the game, and how do you discover the best appeal for that game to lead with? Well, often what you think is appealing to your game isn't, and that's because you're just a sample size of one. Just because one person thinks something is cool doesn't mean thousands will too. So it's a bad idea to sit there by yourself and brainstorm, what makes your game appealing. And also, you might be tempted, to ask, other game devs or friends or family to tell you, what's appealing about your game, or you'll sit around with your team and try to come up with an answer. Don't. This is a mistake. It's like asking people leaving an ice cream shop with an ice cream in their hand and then asking them if they like ice cream. You'll get skewed results. So it's the same thing when you're asking other game devs or people you'll also get skewed results. So who do you ask to find out what makes your game appealing? So the number one person who will give you actual honest feedback about your game's appeal are the people who will buy your game. So that's what I do. I go ask, potential customers about what makes a game appealing or not. And then I use, customer feedback to determine two things. The first one is how much appeal is there for this game? And number two is what's the best appeal to lead with? So once I understand those two criterias, I then use that, data to help me craft an ad that will grab attention. Because the last thing I want to do is to pay for an ad and hope I guessed right. I don't want to guess, and because guessing leads to mistakes and it will cost you. So that's how I prepare. That's how I eliminate as many mistakes as I can. And that's how I make sure I get the best ROI when I pay for ads. All right, so how do you do this? How do you find potential customers and ask them if your game is appealing or not? So let me show you that in step 2. And that is figure out what to say to potential customers. So any questions you have about your game can be answered through testing and collecting data. And yes, you can get some insights, by sitting around with your team or by yourself and, brainstorming ideas. But the actual court of brutal truth is with, potential customers. And so where is this, court of brutal truth? Well, I like going to Reddit to do all my testing and research. And I will eventually, start using TikTok. But for now, for me, the best place is Reddit, because it's a forum where, like-minded people come to hang out. And I find TikTok more like a carnival where, all types of people are, hanging out. So it's really hard to find my target there. But anyway, let's start. So remember, we're going to ask potential customers what's appealing about your game, and not other devs and other family or, friends. So to do that, we need to get organized. We need to prepare what we'll say to them. Also, we need to know where to go, and we need to, keep track of the feedback and the data. So first, let's work on what we will say to the potential customers so that way we can get honest, brutal feedback. So here's a script I use when I approach potential customers. And through trial and error, I found that, asking opinion questions works best when, trying to get attention and trying to get people to respond. Okay, here's the script. So for example, say I'm making a Fallout-like game, like Fallout 2. Here's the script that I would use. Hey, can I get your opinion on the Fallout-like genre? What frustrates you the most in this genre? And what do you love most in this genre? And I'm asking because I'm developing a Fallout-like game, but it's also a top-down shooter and it's not turn-based. And any insights you have about this genre will help me a lot. And if you're curious, here's my Steam page. So that's my formula. And I do have a blueprint you can download so that way you can copy this formula. So also you'll notice that I'll use message code 001 or some sort of, tracking number. And I do this because I like to test out different messages and I like to, track which messages I use when I do, start talking to people. And you'll see what I mean in step 4 when I talk about tracking data. But for now, I just have a code just to help me reference back to this message. All right, good. Now that we know what to ask, let's work on, finding our target players. So step 3 is go where your players are hanging out. So because Reddit is a forum, people will gravitate to a certain interest. And this makes it really easy to go, where your fans are going and hanging out by simply going to, a specific niche subreddit. So for example, like I said, I was making that Fallout-like RPG game. I would go to subreddits like R Fallout, R Fallout 2, R RPG Gamers, and R CRPG. And it's the same case for your game. Whatever genre your game is, there's going to be a subreddit for it. And also there will be, a subreddit for a specific game in that genre too. So you can, like R Fallout. And you might be tempted, to go to huge subreddits like R Gaming or RPC Gaming. But I find that these huge subreddits are hit and miss when it comes to, getting people to respond. It's because, basically there's a huge mix of different type of players and, fans. And the bigger the subreddit is, it's harder to find that one specific person that specifically loves your niche genre. So it's better to find, smaller niche subreddits because you'll get more responses. So what I want you to do in this, step is to find 4 niche subreddits that align with your genre and your game. But don't go, guns a-blazing right now. Don't start DMing people just yet. We still need to get organized. We still need to collect some data. And remember, mistakes will be made. So to eliminate mistakes, we need to prepare and to get organized. So before you start, sending DMs, let's get organized. So here's how. In step 4, I want to talk about how to track your results using, this spreadsheet I made for you. So in this part, we're going to go reach out to, potential customers and try to figure out what makes your game appealing. Because remember, before you spend any money on an ad, it's vital that you find that one big appeal that will resonate with the most people. And again, what you think is appealing about your game might not be to people who will pay for your game. Okay, so here's what to do. So I made a copy of the spreadsheet that I use, personally, when I do market research, and I put it in a Google Sheet. And again, you can download the blueprint below. So open the spreadsheet, and then, if you want to work on it, you got to save it to your hard drive or, copy and paste it into your own Google Sheet. Okay, now this is going to be a little dry, but stay with me because without, tracking data like this, then you'll make huge mistakes later on. And like I said, I'd rather not pay for mistakes. I'd rather make mistakes, as cheaply and quickly as I can right now when there's nothing, on the line. Okay, so open the spreadsheet and here's how to use it. Okay, in the spreadsheet, you'll see column B, which I, named count. So remember how you found 4 subreddits? Well, what you're going to do is send out 50 DMs to each subreddit. So for a total of 200 DMs. So that's why I have, count here because it helps me track how many DMs I send out to each subreddit. And tracking this is important because you want to find out which subreddit gets the most engagement and more importantly, the one that doesn't get engagement. So for example, I was helping a game dev market, a game inspired by Zelda. So I went, naturally to our Zelda and I got, very little people to reply. And knowing this data helped me avoid a costly mistake because what I mean is, like I said, I naturally thought, our Zelda would be a good fit. And if I didn't do this test, I would have paid for an ad targeting our Zelda, but I would have wasted money because all those impressions would have not gotten, very little clicks. So you see why it's so important to do this, kind of prep work, because by collecting data like this, you'll uncover which subreddits work best for your game and which ones don't. But if you avoid this step, you'll target your ads to a customer base that has, very little interest. And that's not how you get a good ROI. So you're doing all this stuff, you're doing all this testing because you want to figure out the best place your player is hanging out, but also you want to get feedback to help you, discover your game's appeal. And we'll get into that more later. Okay, so let's go on to column C, and this is your date. So basically enter your date. Then column D is Reddit user. So it's important to copy and paste, the Reddit username because, Reddit chat is very clunky. It's hard to find people you talked to or talked with. And, by recording, the username here, it'll help you find them later if you need to go back to them and chat with them later. So for instance, I get users asking me, to send them updates or other requests. And so by recording their username, I can easily go back and contact them because going back into chat Reddit and trying to find that user and that message is a mess. All right, let's go on to column E, and that is the subreddit. So enter your subreddit here. And remember, you're going to pick out 4 subreddits and you'll approach 50 people for each subreddit. So for a total of 200. Okay, column F is the message code. And this is where you enter your message code. And I keep track of this because I often, test different message variations, that I send out, and I want to see which message performs the best. But I only do this if I'm doing like really a lot of, market research. But for now, you'll be okay with the message that I gave you. And then column G is responded. So 1 equals Y. So what I mean here is that anytime I get a user to reply back to my message, I enter a 1 here, and I use this to help me calculate the conversion rate. And I'll talk about this soon. Okay, column H is their reply. So when somebody replies to you, I copy their message and I paste it here, and you want to have, all your replies in one spot. Okay, column I is your response. So here I just quickly jot down what I replied with because every interaction is different. So I like to keep track of what I said, and if there's any requests or whatever I need to go back to, then I see it in one spot and I can, go back. Okay, column K is conversion. And this is, my simple formula. I keep track of, conversion rates for each subreddit. So for example, if I get 10 replies for, subreddit number 1, then there's a conversion of 20%. So basically 10 divided by 50 is 20%. Again, the idea here is to see which of the 4 subreddits you picked got the best conversion rate, or more importantly, which subreddit got the least, replies in the lowest conversion. And this is important to know because when you create an ad, you get to pick which subreddit to target. And you want to avoid, spending money on a subreddit that isn't going to perform well. So it's best to figure this out now as cheaply and, as quickly as possible. All right, so column N is my message. So here I copy and paste my message, from that Google document. And I do this to make it easy for me because later on when you're, sending out DMs, you basically can just copy and paste from your spreadsheet and then go into that Reddit chat and just paste it there. Okay, now you're ready for the next step, and that is step number 5, send out your messages. Okay, so once you're organized and you have your spreadsheet ready, then you can go ahead and start contacting potential customers. So what I do is basically I have 2 browsers open, split screen, right? So on my left side I have my spreadsheet, and then on my right side I have Reddit open. Then once I'm on Reddit, I'll find the subreddit I'm targeting. Then I'll find a post that is getting a lot of engagement. Then I go into the comments, I find a user, and then I right click the user and then open that user profile in a new tab. And then I quickly scan their profile because I want to make sure they're not a game dev. And usually, game devs will have links to their game in their profile page. And remember, because other game devs are not my target, players who will, pay money for my game are the target. Then I click the request button, and please know Reddit often changes their UI, so this might look different in the future, but you get the idea. Then I hop over to the browser on the left side where my spreadsheet is open, and then in column N, I copy and paste my message. Then I go back to the right side, then I paste the message in the chat and I hit enter and let it fly. So here's some basic quick tips. So tip number 1 is don't send out chat requests too fast because you'll get flagged for doing so, and they'll disable your chat request button for, a certain amount of time. So tip 2 is it takes about, 1 hour to send out 50 requests. And I know it's tedious, but, growing your business takes a lot of hard work. So you got to do this work. So tip 3 is as people start replying, don't forget to update your spreadsheet because Reddit chat is very clunky. So it's very important to record your data the moment you get, a reply, because you might not be able to find that reply if you leave it, if you leave chat and then come back later. Okay, tip 4 is it should take about 3 to 4 days for all your replies to get in. And after 4 days, some might trickle in, but for the most part, on day 3, you'll get at least 80 to 90% of your replies. Okay, tip 5 is don't forget to reply back and answer any questions they have. Thank the user for their time. And I always ask if they like the game, then to give it a wish list. Okay, so now what? What do you do with all this data? So let's work on that next. So here's step 6, analyze your data. So after 3 or 4 days, you're ready to analyze your data. So then what are you exactly looking for? So there's two things. So thing number one is, first you want to see which subreddit got the most engagement and the least engagement. And this will give you a clue if there's any appeal for your game. And what if you don't get a lot of replies? Well, don't be afraid to do another test with 3 or 4 other different subreddits. Even, try R gaming or PC gaming. Plus, the more work you put into, market research, the better insights you'll get. And that's because, the bigger sample size, the better the data. So don't be discouraged if you're not getting any replies. Keep working at it. Keep, sending out more DMs. Okay, thing number 2, what you're looking out for is common words and phrases that keep coming up. So for example, when I was researching, that Fallout-like genre game for a client, I kept hearing people talking about, turn-based combat, and because it was too slow, and some people didn't like that. And this was a big aha moment because the game I was marketing didn't have turn-based combat. So I used that knowledge of, what people don't want, and it helped me differentiate the game by saying it's a Fallout-like RPG game without, the slow turn-based combat. Again, I'm looking for those small little details that will get me attention in my marketing message. So my point is, you got to go through your answers the people gave you. And what I want you to notice is the words and phrases that keep popping up. Because remember, you ask the player what they like and hate about your genre, and you can use that to your advantage because there's a good chance that your game offers players what they want or avoids, what players don't want. And then these little insights that you discover will help you in step 7, and that is write your Reddit ad. Okay, so you spend a lot of time, prepping, so congratulations. And I really do mean that because what most game devs do, they go straight to this step and start making an ad, and they never take the time to research their market, and they never, try to figure out what appeals to their target market. And so what happens is they'll spend money on a Reddit ad, their ad doesn't perform well, they waste money, and they give up saying that, promoting and, paid ads doesn't work. And like I said at the beginning of this, guide, business is a risk and there's going to be no guarantees. And when trying to do something new for the first time, you will make mistakes. So it's best to, make those mistakes as early and as quickly as you can. So that's why I had you go through 6 steps before getting here, because this is how you get the best ROI, because once you're organized and prepped, then you're ready to, start paying for ads. But also I got one more warning. Even if you and I do our best to prepare and eliminate as many mistakes as we can, and try to dial in the best appeal for our game, there's still a chance that Reddit users won't find the game interesting. Because, Reddit is Reddit. It attracts a certain type of person. And it doesn't mean that your game is bad or it's not marketable. It just means Reddit doesn't like it. And that's okay. And that's why I'm starting to learn how to, market on TikTok because it's always best not to rely on one platform. And once I do get better at promoting, indie games on TikTok, I'll share with you what I discovered. But for now, Reddit it is. And please know, I'm not trying to put any doubt in you. Business, like I said, is a risk. And anybody who tells you that they have an answer on how to beat risk is basically lying. And remember, I fail a lot too, but I don't give up. You don't give up, because eventually what you try will work. Okay, saying all that, let's finally write your ad and post it on Reddit. So in step 6, you spent time analyzing what players told you about what they liked and didn't like about your genre. And also you got some feedback about your game too, basically trying to, find that appeal. Now, what you'll do here is use your analysis to help you write a headline for your Reddit ad. So for example, my analysis told me that some players don't like, turn-based combat in CRPG games, right? So because the game I'm marketing is a top-down shooter CRPG, I'm going to use that insight as leverage. So I would write a headline like this, for example: a top-down post-apocalyptic shooter inspired by Fallout 2's storytelling, wishlist now. So let me break this down and tell you exactly what I'm doing here. And this might seem kind of simple, but just like a pop song, right? It has simple chord progressions, but it's really hard to write something catchy and attention-getting, right? Even though it might seem simple, it's the same idea here. You're trying to write something very simple that's easy to understand, but also, builds curiosity. So let's break this down. So in the headline, I want to attract my target audience, but I also want my target audience to get curious, right? So here's the formula I use. So basically there's 4 elements. There's a subgenre, there's a combat or gameplay type, there's the setting or theme, and then a unique hook. So here's another example: a roguelike where you crawl dungeons at night and shopkeep during the day. Again, I stuffed in all 4 elements in that short headline. Basically, you have the subgenre, gameplay type, setting, and a unique hook. So for the first, 3 elements, it's pretty easy to come up with: your subgenre, your gameplay type, and your setting, right? Those 3 things are kind of easy to come up with. But the unique hook is a bit tougher. So let me explain the unique hook. So the unique hook is what makes your game different, what problem it solves in your genre, or what does your game give to players that they're not getting from, other games. So this is why you spent so much time, reaching out to potential players and asking them what they want and don't want in your genre, because their answers will help you come up with a unique hook. So when they read your, headline, it'll make them curious. Okay, great. Now that you have a headline complete, the last part is you need an image or a video. And I find that videos, convert better, but it really depends on the game, because sometimes, screenshot is all you need to get people curious to click your ad. And I'll talk more about this in the tips section below. Okay, so go grab your screenshot or your Steam capsule art or your gameplay trailer, and then grab your headline. And let's move on to step 8, and that is post your ad on Reddit. So again, because Reddit always changes their UI, I'm not going to go into details on how to create a Reddit ad. And Reddit themselves have a really good step-by-step guide, and I'll link it in the description below. It's about 5 minutes, and they'll tell you exactly what to do. It's very simple, and they'll do a better job than I will. So in this step, all you need is your headline and your image or your video, and then follow that step-by-step guide from Reddit. Okay, so here's some tips on managing your Reddit ad campaign. So let me share with you some tips and mistakes to avoid when running and managing your ad campaign. So tip number 1 is I like to set my daily budget to like $6 to $10 and run the ad for about 10 days. So for a total of, $100. Tip 2 is your ad needs to be approved first. So approval usually takes, a few minutes, but sometimes it could take, 24 hours. And if it's taking longer than 24 hours, there's probably something wrong with your headline. So for example, I had the word, die in a headline, and I waited for over, 24 hours. And it was still pending. So I, removed the word die, and then it got, approved right away. Okay, so here's step number 3. Once your ad is running and you don't see any results, make sure that you're viewing the right date. So on the top right or somewhere, you'll see a calendar, and make sure you're clicked on the right day. Okay, so tip number 4 is your CTR is your click-through rate. So this means how many times your ad was displayed and how many times it was clicked. So don't worry if your click-through rate is, below 1%. Remember, you're, marketing a niche indie game and you're getting a CRT that's, 0.5%. That's okay. But if you're getting, something way lower than that, then there's probably something wrong. However, saying all that, my goal is to reach a CTR of 2%. Okay, here's tip number 5, and that is CPC. This is your cost per click, and your cost will depend on how much competition there is. So what I mean is there's probably less competition for subreddits like r roguelikes than there are for bigger subreddits like r gaming. So also that's why I like targeting smaller niche subreddits, because the CPC is lower and there is, less competition. Plus you're targeting your main audience. Okay, here's tip number 6, and that is run your ad for 48 hours, then pause it, and then create a new ad. So change your headline or use a different image or a different video, because it's always a good idea to A/B test your ads and find a winner. Okay, tip number 7 is, for the most part, videos like trailers, animated GIFs, or movies work better than screenshots or capsule images. But that depends on the game. So like I mentioned in tip number 6, do a test to see which pulls better, videos or images. And tip number 8 is, when you watch your Steam wishlist numbers, you got to remember there's going to be 1 day delay with those stats coming in. Okay, tip number 9 is, don't get discouraged if your ad isn't working. So like I said, set a budget for $8 to $10. And if you're not getting the results you like, then pause the campaign and change the headline or image or the video. And remember, everything you're doing is a test. Your goal here is to spend $100 to find out which ad gets you the best ROI. And this leads me to tip number 10, and that is, the goal with this $100 Reddit ad campaign is to test different ads to find the best performer. Because once you find that one ad that has the best, CTR, then scale up and invest more money into that one ad that works. So after this $100 test, you can now, put in maybe $200 or $500 now that it's working, you're getting wish lists or game sales. And of course, if you want me to create these ads for you and help you manage your ad campaign and help you grow your wish list before your game launches, and if you need more game sales, then click the description below and I'll show you how much it costs and what you get. All right, my name's Darius. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you later. Bye.